Okay, here we are. Fantastic. Thank you so much all for coming. Take a seat, take a seat. Um, I am super excited. Just after having been in Altspace with Matt and Tom and some of you good people, now we've jumped through the metaverse and here we are on the Engage platform to inaugurate this conference here as well, UniVirtual Experience, in partnership with the Virtual World Society and Educators in VR and a whole host of volunteers. And in particular, also our Infinity sponsor, Matt. Thank you so much, Matt.
Yeah, it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you all for being here. Really excited with what the team here is doing at UniVirtual and Virtual World Society. So really impressive stuff. We're happy to be here. Happy to see you here and expecting an awesome 30 days filled with really cool events and all things in VR.
Right. Wonderful. Okay, Tom, do you want to say a few words? And then we're going to bring on our guest.
Well, again, this is a dream made come true. As I mentioned to Matt earlier and to the audience, that this is an opportunity not only for us to be on the moon with all these wonderful people, and especially here, Charlie. So I'm excited about this, and what a great kickoff to the whole
Absolutely.
month.
Absolutely. Here we go. Okay, thanks, guys. Charlie, do you want to come on up? It is my huge honor and pleasure to introduce Charlie Fink. Charlie Fink is a futurist, a Forbes columnist, consultant in many ways, a speaker extraordinaire. And I would like to start considering myself your friend, Charlie. You're back, which means something right, I think. I'm going to hand over the stage to you. I cannot wait to hear what you've got for us.
Thanks.
And we're going to do, everybody stick around for afterwards. We've got some Q&A with Charlie. After Charlie's Q&A, we're going to have a couple of words from our Infinity sponsor, HP, and then we're going over to our expo hall, which is going to be another treat. So we're in for a great ride. Charlie, over to you. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you. Great. Thanks to see everybody. Tom, thank you for those kind words. Great to be here Saturday afternoon in Los Angeles. I expect people here from all over the world, but thanks for coming. Yeah, this conference, you know, I didn't do it, but I wanted to do something about teaching in VR because, you know, I've been doing a lot of it the past year and comparing it to Zoom. Most people don't get to do that, right? Because I teach XR, we spend a lot of time bopping between Zoom and generally Engage, sometimes Altspace or other destinations VR. And it's been interesting to contrast the two methods. Needless to say, for all of those here, VR is far superior to Zoom. I am so thrilled this conference is not another Zoom webinar, which I hope I never see another in my life. There have been so many at this point. And anyway, what I have been talking about this year is this idea of the metaverse that suddenly everyone is talking about. I don't know if that's because of crypto or because there are a number of companies that seem to be making moves to create a Oasis type connected universe of websites with a common avatar. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what we think a metaverse might be. So can I get the next slide, please, Daniel? Thank you. So you guys know me, so I won't dwell on this. Daniel gave me a very nice introduction. I think I'm in the fourth act of my career as a college professor and a writer here, but I did work on the early days of VR in the mid-90s, running a company called Virtual World that was trying to do cab-based simulation in the real world. So it was a real pleasure 20 years later to come back as an author and a speaker and to be so warmly welcomed back into this community. Next slide, please. Daniel. Oh, here we go. So yeah, I mean, like Tom and I have lived through a lot of disruption. It's hard. I see a lot of gray-haired people in here who chose gray hair avatars. But you know, when I was a kid, the first audio cassette was introduced, and then things just cascaded from there. And it seems they're going faster and faster, but I certainly have experienced, you know, I would say grown up with, but I've actually spent my life, you know, riding this wave of innovation in computing. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I wrote a couple books, which many of you know, some of you don't. Next slide. They are AR enabled books, so you read them with a smartphone in your hand. Obviously, we all have our smartphones, if not in our hand most of the time, nearby, so you are able to, through the lens, through your camera sensor, able to use markers. We used Vuforia computer vision, so the camera recognizes the marker, the little graphic, and it brings up the appropriate animation. You can see there, that's little Charlie, you know, because I love to do the cover of my own books. The economics of an AR-enabled book are insanely bad, so we'll not see too many of its like. Next slide, please. All of that just by way of introducing myself and how I spent the last 5 years. One concept I started out with that I think is pretty important is the difference between AR and VR. Even though we're about to be, you know, hit with a whole range of devices that do both AR and VR. I mean, look, if you're wearing AR glasses and you put a Snap-on lens onto them, they're VR. I just looked at something called Campfire, which uses the old Meta technology, and it does just that. And it's even better in VR than it is in AR. So these devices are going to merge, but they're not the same, right? AR depends on the physical world and enhancing it in some way. And VR is a complete occlusion of that world. So VR, which has its roots in cave paintings and really anything for which we willingly suspend our disbelief. Whereas AR is the opposite. It takes reality and it amplifies it. It makes it better. So there are very different use cases for these two devices, and that is very relevant to our conversation about metaverses. Next slide. Next slide, please, Daniel.
Sorry, I have advanced it. Is someone else not seeing it?
Oh, yeah, it's not moving. I don't see it correctly behind me, nor in front of me. It's still on the Quest for Immersion slide.
Has that changed anything? Chris, can you help me out? Any ideas? Need to reload it? Sorry about this, Charlie. Bear with me. Where's Chris? I may eject it and start it again, Charlie. Are you okay with that? Oh, here we go. Okay, Chris is on it. Thanks, Chris. We'll just advance to the other slides. Bear with us. Sorry about that, Charlie.
No problem. I'm going to grab a water real quickly. Okay, yeah, keep advancing them. I'll say stop when I need you to stop. Next one. Next slide. We're back to man's quest for immersion of being stuck there.
While we're waiting, Charlie, you want a coffee?
Thank you very much.
Hang on, I'll share it for you. There you go. You should be able to grab it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little difficult because my desk and the illusion is interfering. There we go. Okay, so
Okay.
Ready Player One, we all know Ready Player One, and before it, Snow Crash, which have kind of defined in a way this idea of a metaverse where we could freely travel from place to place. Next slide. Next slide. This is not, yeah, so next slide. Here we go. That's the Oasis, right? The metaphor in the Oasis was that there were planets, right? And you went from planet to planet, and the way that the company that owned the Oasis, Gregarious Games, made money was they charged you from going from place to place. So, who is building a metaverse, and how do we go from place to place? Next slide. These are not in the order I wanted them, but for that, I have no one to blame but myself. Next slide. Did we miss one? Yeah, go back. We're missing a slide, I think.
Trying to go back here, Charlie. It's not cooperating with me here. Let me do a reload here. Sorry about that.
Why don't I just load it locally for myself, and I'll just run it myself.
Okay.
If you can do that. Yeah. Okay.
Let's do that. That'll take 5 minutes, and that'll be better for everyone here.
Thank you. There you go. So you've
I
given
think I got it
us a
for you
great
here,
taste. We're
Charlie.
going to be back for more.
So my
Charlie's
PC
gonna
quickly load it locally.
Here we
Yeah.
go. We should be good here.
want to give
How's
it
that
another
looking
try,
for
Charlie?
you?
So
Yeah.
can you back on the
We're
slide?
on man's quest for immersion. I'll go forward another one here.
Okay.
There we are.
Okay.
We got folks in goggles.
Right. You need to go back further. I don't know how we got ahead like this.
Back further. Okay. Let's go through this again. Here we go. Sorry about that. Metaverse book. Now we're AR enabled, Charlie.
Love that part. Next.
Man's quest for immersion.
We'll go over that. Past that.
Folks in goggles.
Next.
Okay. Game changer.
Okay. Well, I mean, needless to say, VR is growing very quickly now between Sony and between the Oculus Quest 2. So I think the Facebook results suggested they've sold about 5 million of them so far.
Wow.
They're rapidly catching up to Sony, which has got between 8 and 9 million so far. So Sony is still selling the PlayStation VR. It's not a huge percentage of the 150 million installed base, but it's slowly creeping up in single digits, and they eventually reach 10% in the next 2 years. Next slide.
It's just a little bit of a delay there, Charlie.
Okay.
There we go.
The more people are in VR, the more this idea of metaverses matter, right? So that's why this has come up now. What is a metaverse, and why should we care? So, of course, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, this was originally something that started in literature, and literature about the coming fourth age of spatial computing, which I define as ubiquitous, invisible, wearable computing. So that is the age that we have not yet entered, but that's what comes next after the mobile era of computing that we are in right now. So, so what kind of qualities would a metaverse have, right? And I think this is really where everybody is right now, right? So you have to have a fully embodied presence, somewhat like what we have right now. We have agency. There is, SATS gravity and, walls that have collision. So it feels a little like the real world. Things take place in real time. They obviously don't have to, but we humans want things to be linear and make sense. So there's plasticity and persistent spaces. And I could break a bottle on this space. And, if this were a metaverse, that bottle should be there when I get back tomorrow, unless someone has cleaned it up, right? This is a persistent space that acts like a space in real life. And then, of course, we expect these worlds to be contiguous. Right now, you need to fire up a different app. But obviously, as we think of a metaverse and as computers get faster and smarter, in particular VR, presumably that friction will go away. There needs to be an unlimited number of participants, just like the real world, right? And we have a pretty good number of participants in here. No one's really gotten past 100, except for Verbella, which is a 3D virtual world that you participate in through a 2D screen, as everybody knows, just like Second Life. So they're the ones who have had the most success with simultaneous uniques inside of the same simulation. Most companies, like you were just in Altspace, once you get to 50 people, they clone the room, right? Fortnite clones the room at 100 people. So, and then of course, the other thing that we all expect to have is there should be some kind of invisible currency that allows us to do microtransactions, right? So that there can be commerce in the virtual world. And I mean, Second Life has had some success with this. They're a great proxy for the coming metaverse, and they are in fact registered as a bank, so that when they went to sell Sansar, which was their unfortunately unsuccessful sort of attempt to remake or to make a VR Second Life, when they went to sell Sandstar, they had trouble peeling it off because they were a bank and there are so many banking regulations around transferring currency. And then of course there's this whole idea that right now there's this craze for NFTs, okay? I'm a geezer, I don't totally get it, but whatever. It's a little bit, in my opinion, like tulip mania. Like the tulip bulb is valuable because we all agreed that it had value. So I get with Bitcoin how that works because there is scarcity. And of course, all items in the digital world, if they are going to be unique items, right? Because everything here could be cloned, including your avatar. So obviously going forward in this future metaverse, blockchain is going to be, or its ilk is going to be attached to everything, right? Your avatar will be part of a blockchain so that no one can steal it and pretend to be you. For example, I might buy a beautiful handbag for my wife, but because I paid $400 for it and it's a status symbol, I want people to know that it's an original, even though it can be cloned, right? The people that sold for $64 million can be cloned. You can put it in your virtual house on the wall and enjoy it just as if you had the original $64 million people. But this idea that there is commerce and that things have unique value as they do in the real world is very important to a metaverse. But the most important thing to a metaverse, and we can go on to the next slide, is your avatar. Next slide, please, not my point here. Next one. Next one. I'm going to make you go back in a minute, but I want to hit on this avatar idea. Next one. Where did I put the slide? Oh, this is the old version of the presentation. Okay, so just go back to where we were, and I will explain what I mean. So what you need to have, and actually Facebook and others are trying to do this, you need to have single avatar, which is your identity. That's why Facebook is so crazed for you to have one identity. So you have this one single identity, but in your backpack, contained inside your avatar, are all the costumes that you want. Right? Maybe you want to be a fish. Maybe you want to be a bat. You're still you to the system, but you have your closet full of avatars and props and toy guns or whatever you like in there, you know, the Millennium Falcon. And along with that is your wallet or your cryptocurrency. In addition, you will have everything you have on your smartphone. And you will not be cut off from the real world when you are in the virtual world or in the metaverse. Now, the metaverse, it's funny the way science fiction predicts the future, or maybe what it does is it stimulates the creativity in scientists to create a future which conforms to the vision that was implanted in them by storytellers and artists. And a very interesting idea for another presentation. But the Ready Player One posited, and I don't think wrongly necessarily, that it's a video game company that creates the metaverse that everybody wants to colonize. Right? So the metaverse, to use the metaphor of the internet, the World Wide Web, if you will, was where we all went to colonize the web with our own web pages or our business web pages and our LinkedIn and our virtual identity, or our virtual 2D identity as it exists today. So it's not wrong to think, and in fact, some video game companies are competing, Epic Games is competing to be the creator of that metaverse, right? They just raised $1 billion. They told everybody this tranche of investment was specifically about creating a metaverse. And indeed, they've diversified from games, and they've created islands where they can have concerts or where you can do education. So it has some of the qualities of the metaverse that I mentioned in that sort of laundry list of metaverse concepts that I brought together. But the most important asset, by far, the number one asset in the metaverse is your avatar. With that wallet and that smartphone and that collection of your personal inventory. Next slide, please. So Oculus could be building a metaverse. They have taken an interesting approach. They have renewed interest in avatars. They're trying to build a big social world called Horizon. They are using Facebook Messenger to give you a pan-platform communication device so that if I am battling people in Onward and you are driving in your car, you should be able to use Messenger to give me a call, just the same way the characters in Ready Player One contacted one another, even though they were engaging in completely different activities on different planets or servers or however we're going to think of it. Next slide, please. So Epic Games is doing the same thing. You know, they're, as I said, using Fortnite. They're focused on the avatar right now. You've got VR chat. Roblox has a currency. Rec Room is introducing a currency. You know, Horizon has just been launched by Facebook. They, you know, that's another Facebook play for a virtual world that could be metaverse-like or part of the Facebook metaverse, although I think it's got a long way to go to catch up to VR chat and alt space. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about AR and the metaverse, right? Because in Snow Crash, where we first heard about the metaverse from Neil Stephenson, he was thinking that the entirety of the virtual world was defined by the globe, right? And every place had a virtual metaphor. So you could be present in this room either physically, virtually, or as an avatar. Right? So we might be in a conference room and it'll be like the Star Wars Star Chamber scene where some people in a scene are virtual and some people are real, and the participants can't always tell which is which. Next slide, please. And indeed, there will be, and there is in part already, a digital copy of the real world, right? The mirror world is a one-to-one digital copy of our world, sort of in a way like you would put a surgical glove on your hand, and it would be show the shape of your hand. So Google has mapped the world and has created a metaverse that way. And the idea, of course, is that you could put now doors into this world for the virtual characters. And the virtual characters, no longer constrained by time and space, whereas physical characters obviously are. So this has become a very, very hot topic right now. GamesBeat just did a metaverse summit last month. So people are interested in it. They're talking about it, even though we are at still the very earliest stages, and there isn't enough people in VR simultaneously to create that kind of virtuous circle, which is a network effect, right? The more people that are on it, the more people have to get on it. That's what happened with the internet in 95 and 96. Next slide, please. So who's going to rule the metaverse? Well, I would say the defining factor is there are two defining factors. One is the avatar, and the other one is user-generated content, right? What is Facebook if not user-generated content, right? We go onto Facebook to see content made by other people, not media organizations. Now, of course, that has evolved. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But we went to Facebook because we wanted to see things that our other friends made. We go to Instagram because we want to see the pictures that our friends have taken, right? So that is user-generated content. User-generated content ran Internet 1.0. Everybody had to have email. wasn't a choice at a certain point. By 1997, if you did not have email, you could not communicate. You would fall out of touch. There would be a social penalty for not having email, right? You would fall out of touch with people and you would miss out. FOMO. And of course, a similar thing happened with social media, and social media, drove the adoption of mobile. Once we had cameras and mobile phones, social media was off to the races. We don't want for content in our social media feeds. And then of course, as we got into the mobile age, things like sensors on our cameras, things like mobile messaging, things like mapping suddenly became the most important applications in the world. So here's an interesting thought as we get into the world of wearable, ubiquitous, invisible computing. What is going to drive Web 4.0? Or whatever we end up calling it, the Cybertronic age, or I don't know. And it really doesn't quite matter yet. Roni Abovitz started to call it the photonic period, which I kind of like, even though I'm not quite sure what photonic means. It sounds really space age and cool. So in this age of invisible computing, what is that user-generated content that is going to drive it forward? Next slide, please. It is world building. Right, and we see its metaphor. The first real metaverse was Second Life. It had an incredible run in the aughts. Right, there was no VR, there was no social VR, and at one point they were having 5 million daily uniques trying to do the things in a 3D virtual world through a 2D screen. They were trying to do all the things we could do in real life, just much more conveniently and easily. That people opened avatar shops, all the things that you would expect to happen in a metaverse started to happen, right? There was land, there was scarcity around land, so prices started to go up. But of course, it ran out of steam, as we all know. Social media overtook it because it was, in many ways, its own weird proto-social media. Before there was really social media, but it was a real serious trial for a metaverse, and it almost worked. Why didn't it work? Well, it was ahead of its time. Even 5 million uniques is not really enough for metaverse, because a metaverse is tremendous. A metaverse has no end. It's the size of the universe. So, we are far from it being built, but make no mistake, it will be built by users. Sansar was a perfectly good platform. It's still being used by somebody for virtual concerts, which have become very popular, as you know, during the pandemic. So we'll see, but they couldn't. Again, Sansar was one of those many projects that were started in 2015 that people thought by 2018 or 2020 there would be, VR will have arrived and there'd be 60 million unique daily users, and none of that. That was all true, but the over-optimism stranded a lot of companies, a lot of startups financially. One of them was Altspace, right? Facebook, Microsoft came in the last minute and rescued them for a very small amount of money. It was really a courtesy to its investors who got their money back. But the founders and the people who had started it, of course, got nothing. Some of them got jobs at Microsoft, which ain't the worst thing in the world. Next slide, please. So what's going to happen? As you all know, there's competition right now for content creators on streaming platforms, right? Twitch and YouTube are bidding against each other to persuade influencers to stay on their platform. And the equivalent of that in XR, and in particular in the metaverse phase of the fourth age of computing, it's going to be driven by world builders. World builders will become the cyber celebrities, or the digital celebrities of the next age of computing, and you will see Horizon and Altspace and others competing for them to come and build worlds where people want to spend time. I think that is going to be a huge differentiator, and partly going to depend on the tools. And how good are the tools? How easy are the tools? Or are the tools some version of a game engine? Right? You could look at the tools that I mean, one of the reasons I posit that Second Life ran into so many problems once it reached a certain size is that the tools were too difficult. And they were that way partly on purpose because people liked the gamification of it and that there was a acquisition of mastery over time. But it was very frustrating to just people who wanted to get in there and build a clubhouse. So I do believe that the company with the best world building platforms will win. But who has really good world building platforms right now? Game engines. Right? If you really want to build a world, you need to use Unity or Unreal Engine. Now, for those of you who don't know what game engines are, they were invented to ease the production of video games. But now that they've been around 20 years, 25 years, they've started to do lots of other things like, you know, help with the digital production of movies and special effects, to use one example. You could also an entire movie inside of VR. And it would be very, very, very high fidelity. Next slide, please. So the game engines may have a lot to do with building virtual worlds. And as I mentioned earlier, Unreal Engine, which is a very popular game engine, particularly for high experiences in games that have high-end graphics needs, they own Fortnite. And, you know, they've built something called the MetaHuman creator. It's partly to create characters in video games, right? So you can create 200 soldiers really, really quickly, which before was hard. So, you know, that's a feature that they've built into that game engine, but that could also be an avatar maker, right? That could be the way you, and by the way, if every AAA game is built on Unreal Engine, well, then having your avatar, your universal avatar, show up there should be a very easy thing. So I think that actually Unreal Engine, as well as Unity, but Unreal Engine is actually doing it. You know, Epic Games, I say Unreal Engine interchangeably, is in a very good position right now relative to the question of who is going to build the metaverse. I mean, there are going to be lots and lots of metaverses, but at some point, someone is going to have the metaverse. Whether, and again, I don't think there will be one metaverse anytime soon. I do think there will be one avatar. And this one avatar is going to be the most important asset. So that all these other places that you go, yeah, they're places that you go, but you're still you, you're still your avatar, you still have your wallet, you still have your mobile phone. Couple of final thoughts about this next phase. You know, a lot of it hasn't happened yet. So in some sense, the conversation is a little bit premature. There may be several cuts at this which compete, like we have a world of Android phones and we have a world of Apple. We haven't talked much about Apple. They have not yet played their hand. We know they have several different kinds of XR devices in the works, but they've not yet played their hand. I do think they have a VR device that they're working on. They may or may not release it, right? And part of the problem in following Apple rumors is you have many teams all over the world working on many parts of many systems. So it all gets kind of conflated together. But I will tell you this, and you can hold me to this when we talk next year or the year after. When Apple comes out with its head-mounted, all-day, every-day wearable computer, it's going to do two things, or it is not going to work. One thing is vision correction. Half the people in the world will wear glasses. This is going to take wearing glasses and make it much better. Why? Not because they're going to throw a bunch of videos about how to make a cake. They're going to do it because it makes what I'm already doing better, so that it sees when I'm reading in the dark. It knows when I'm outside playing tennis. It knows when I'm driving in a car. You know, that to me would change my life, because we all know, us glasses wearers, how crappy those photosensitive lenses were. But what if this retina reading glass were made by Apple? That could be a game changer. And now here's the final thing, okay? What has driven every phase of computing? connecting to other people, period. What is that going to be for XR, wearable XR? It's going to be telepresence. So I promise you, I am not wrong about this. When Apple releases their headset, it will do vision correction and it will do telepresence. And it'll create an app store for everybody to do everything else because nothing else matters. Everything else is a flea on the elephant. So let them build it, put it in the app store, take your cut, and focus on the things that you have to have in order to make it viable. So it's very hard to talk about the end game and virtual worlds when we still don't know what the platform is. We still don't know what the hardware is going to be. And I think that's a little bit of a problem when it comes to NFTs, right? Because NFTs and these servers full of virtual real estate are assuming they have already won, or that it even matters, right? Because we don't know what the final paradigm is going to be. And yes, there is, listen, in computing, there is no final, right? There is only next. But there is also clear and unclear. And so right now, people are very excited about the metaverse, but we are excited about something which is opaque, right? And all the things we need to know in order to start guessing how it's going to work do not yet exist. So can we go to the last slide? So as I end this part of this conversation, I would just remind you of what you already know, right? Products, whether they're computers or whether they're consumer devices, need to take something we're already doing and make it much better. And then we will adopt that way of doing it. And then, as I've mentioned several times, and this is super relevant to a metaverse, right? There has to be a network effect, right? Everyone has to be there. This is why the World Wide Web, which is really just a way at this point historically of identifying the beginning of the building or colonization of the internet. So people aren't going to buy into the metaverse until everyone is already using it. That's my point there. So last slide. I guess this is the last slide, I think. Yeah, so this is the last slide. I'll be around, happy to keep chatting about the metaverse. I think that there are, lots of different cuts at it, and lots of companies that are going to be working on this problem over the next few years. So I will hardly be the last person to talk to you about metaverses, but I really enjoyed doing it today. Thank you very much. Thank you, Daniel.
Oh, thank you so much, Charlie. That was amazing. I don't know about you guys, but for me, there are several fireside chats worth of conversations there. And before we do anything else, Charlie, I want to invite you back at some point because I have too many questions we're going to cover here. I know your time is precious, but people would come for this. Caitlin, I know you wanted to come up. Tom, you come up for a minute. We're going to do some Q&A, and I'm going to kick off. I always have questions, Charlie. Yeah, Caitlin, what you wanted to say something as well?
Oh, sure. I just wanted to, first of all, let me make sure that I'm on audio. Yeah, do I have spatial or unspatial? Can people hear me?
You're good. You sound great from the back row.
Yep.
Awesome. Charlie, you and I were together at AR in Action at least 3 years ago when Metaverse first came out, and I just feel like there's been so much that's happened in the past 3 years. On behalf of World Society, educators in VR, this is a whole universe opening. So as we backed 3 years ago, I think that at that conference, we were both speaking about storytelling and Metaverse, and you had said the killer app is people. Remember that?
Yeah, killer app is other people. I think I said that today.
Yeah. Great.
True. I guess my big question right now is, as we're in metaverses, maybe some social commentary on the spirit of the times. If you have people yearning for places like Clubhouse and apps that are more voice generated, how do you see the voice generation merging with a lot of these multiverses of people connecting? Really curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's happened with voice in the past 5 years is super interesting, partly because of podcasting. In fact, I just started a podcast with Ted Schilowitz last week as an extension of my column This Week in XR. So every week we blab for 30 minutes, as we often did anyway, about what was going on with companies like Apple and Epic. And, there's so much news every week about what's happening in XR. So we started a podcast because people are, as you said, listening. I happen to think earbuds or AirPods are the beachhead of XR on the body, right? I mean, we are augmenting ourselves when we walk around with those things in our ears, and they will increasingly use spatial sound to achieve different effects. And of course, voice, the human voice, is critical in XR. Right? Because even though, I mean, even though you're looking at my avatar, a lot of the reason this works is because of sound.
Yeah.
Like, if it were not my human voice, I don't think this simulation would
Very true.
by any of us.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
It's how
It's
I
fun.
feel your emotion.
Yeah.
There's so much emotion in voice. Yeah, you're right. Right. You know what's amazing? I mean, around most people, I feel kind of ahead of the game with this technology, and then I listen to you, Charlie, and I feel like I'm in the Stone Ages. What you're describing, where we might be headed, and what people are building right now. I had a thought while you were talking. It might well be that we colonize the metaverse before we colonize space. What do you think?
Oh, totally. No question about it.
Yeah.
Well, I think we may beat the man to Mars. I don't know.
Tom, how about you? You got a question before we open it up to the floor for a few questions?
I'm doing selfies.
Okay.
Okay. Charlie, when we start projecting ahead and we think about the metaverse and we think about, can you hear me okay?
Yes, fine.
Yep.
So we get to this boundary where we start talking about transhumanism. Start thinking about the matrix. Why do we need to move anymore? Why do we have to have legs to move, to have mobility? Why don't we just have this system move our minds around? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, this is, in a way, when I talk to my wife about these kind of things, it terrifies her, and I have to admit, it sort of scares me too. I remember a conversation I had with Jaron Lanier way back when we were at the very beginning of looking about iPhones and things like that. And he and I said, well, you can go two ways with this. You could sort of just start living in this virtual space, and it does everything for you because it'll have all these capabilities. On the other hand, this could be one of the best educational systems we could have for appreciating physical, for appreciating matter, appreciating we can interact with the real world, Mother Nature, and especially with each other. And back to the ultimate connector. The ultimate connector has to be love. That's what really brings hearts together and oneness. That's the Vulcan mind meld on steroids. So I would like to get your feeling about that in terms of where you see the next thing beyond the metaverse.
Thanks. Well, first of all, to have Tom Furness ask me a question, I'm glad this is being recorded because I've been listening to this since I started back with VR 6 years ago. So it is such a pleasure to be here with you, Tom, and I'm so flattered to be engaged with you in this conversation. Let me say three things, and hopefully I won't belabor it too long because, as Daniel said, this is like a whole different fireside chat. But I
Yeah.
Rosedale, who invented Second Life and started High Fidelity, which pivoted from high-end VR to spatial sound. Philip said something really interesting to me a couple of years ago. He said, I think because of automation and AI, people will spend most of their time in the future entertaining one another. I think that is really interesting insight from the guy who created Second Life. I think that the next thing I would say, and you'll appreciate this, back when I was working at AOL in 1995, and I was working with a lot of really smart guys. Ted Leonsis, Steve Case, later Mark Andreessen joined the company. So really smart guys in thinking about the internet. And, I was very lucky to kind of be anywhere close to these conversations, but we believed, and we were right, that the internet was going to change the world. And it was also going to mean the end of gatekeepers. Right? The man could no longer suppress the truth. And not once did one of the really smart, masters of the universe ever say, yes, it will set the truth free, but it also will set free a world of lies and disinformation that will spread much more quickly and over which we will have much less control. No one ever said that. And I'm not saying they're dumb. What I'm saying is we can never in the moment understand the unforeseen consequences. And the next example that I'll go to is Facebook itself. And look, I'm not a Mark Zuckerberg hater. I actually think the guy's a genius and I love him. But I think he has been, as have a lot of other smart people at Facebook, been overtaken by unintended consequences that they cannot control. And at this point, they should not control. Because whoever is going to control that gate has to be accountable to us, has to be accountable to the public, has to be accountable to voters. I know why Mark Zuckerberg doesn't want us all up in the business that he created. Of course he doesn't. I don't blame him, but that also disqualifies him as being that gatekeeper. So, when I think about those things, Tom, and then I start to think about the unintended consequences of spatial computing, I'm with your wife. I mean, it's sort of like, what can go wrong? Holy crow. Well, we did a terrible job of predicting with the internet and social media, right? We did a horrible job of that. So I am very worried about the future of spatial computing because I don't think anybody that I know is smart enough to predict the unintended consequences.
I agree. Fully
and
agree.
Also fighting the last war, right? We're still putting out the fire that we caused with social media, artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
By the way, the artificial intelligence that Facebook and Google are using for recommendations, I worked on that technology at AOL. We thought we were going to recommend music that you liked. We didn't know it was used for mind control. It's obvious now, right? Because we can recommend lies that appeal to you. But it didn't occur to us that that's what that technology could be used for. We thought it was to say, if you like Procol Harum, maybe you'll like The Who. So, I mean, these are, so we're going to be fighting those battles and not paying any attention to what's ahead of us.
Yeah.
That's my concern. When are we going to be less human? Maybe that's part of the unintended consequences, but you're asking a question, Tom, that goes out several decades. So that sort of goes along with the unintended consequences question. They're both the same question. Will we become less human? Will we lose empathy when we can kill each other and there's no consequences?
Here, Charlie. I got something. Reach out your hand, please. I'm going to twist your arm. And you're going to come back and do another fireside chat with us sometime. Do you agree to that at some point, Charlie?
Especially if we be with Tom.
Oh, there you go, Tom. You got an invitation. You heard it here. It's going to happen. Thank you so much. I do want to take maybe tops three short. Please keep your questions concise. Charlie, are you up for that? And then if it's okay, we want to go to the expo. So let's take two questions. He's coming back for fireside chat. Yeah, Sage Freeman. Here, let me microphone. Chris will beat me to it. There you go. Request unmute. You should get a request there, Sage.
Excellent. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, great.
Yeah, sure.
Great. Charlie, hi. Nice to meet you. Great presentation. I am working with Mozilla Hubs. I'm doing a lot in Mozilla Hubs, and I think the immersive web is really we're on the forefront of the immersive web. My question to you is, I'm very interested in the idea of open standards. And, you know, I've been researching and learning more about the Kronos group and WebXR standards. Do you have any remarks around, you know, you talked about companies, who's going to own the metaverse. It would be great if it were open, not owned by a company, but I'm sure that's not realistic.
I actually don't think it will be owned by a company. I think there will be common standards to support the one identity, one avatar. I also think that it has to be WebXR based. Nobody's going to run around downloading apps. How apps and 5G are going to interface when 5G is mature is another not settled bit of computer science. You know, will apps download in the background? Will we do what Qualcomm is predicting, which is kind of a dual compute, a little bit local, lots in the cloud? Maybe. I just, again, this is unsettled computer science. But I am with you on WebXR and its importance and primacy in everything, no matter who owns the metaverse or if it is owned, you know, by many, many, many different companies and individuals. It still has to be WebXR. I still need to send you an invitation in an email or in an instant message, and you need to be able to click that and be there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that question. Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Last question. Then we're going to have some comments from Matt, and then we're going to go to the expo. Video VR Girl, you just joined this platform, if I'm not mistaken. I met you in Altspace earlier, so let's have your question here. Let me get your mic. Where is it?
Are you VR Girl from Facebook?
No. I think I'm a video girl on Facebook. But my question is, how can we get your AR book?
You can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it cheaper from charliefink.com, but you can also buy it from Amazon.
Okay.
Lovely. That was a quick one. We're going to have one more, just one more. Anyone else? Quick question. He's coming back, remember, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Okay. Say that again.
Awesome presentation, Charlie.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Good.
Big round of applause, everyone, please.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Charlie. Yeah, and you said you would come back to the next year's event as well, so I'm going to hold you to that. Matt, where are you? There you are, Matt. Welcome to the stage, please. Matt Gazer from HP. We met you in Altspace just a minute ago.
Yes.
Over to you, Matt. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Wow, Charlie, thank you so much. That was as mind-blowing as I would expect it to be. I'm excited for the metaverse. I can't wait. I hope HP has a pretty important part in that as well. But I just want to thank all of you for being here. We've got a great expo hall. I know we're kind of on a time crunch to get over there, but I just want to say thank you. Thanks to the teams who put it together. Chris, everyone, Tom, Caitlin, Daniel, this is fantastic. And Charlie, thank you so much for coming. Look forward to having you later in this event. Guys, we have 30 days ahead of awesome events to come. So we're really excited about that. And so this is going to be a great event. We're really looking forward to it. And with that, I think maybe we jump over. What do you think, Daniel?
Thanks, Matt. Absolutely, yes. Now, I want to try a little trick. Chris, I had a portal ready. Can I try the portal, or do you suggest we go a different way?
You know, Daniel, I'm going to leave that up to you. No, let's go the other way, actually, because you need to put people through every few seconds. It'll take too long. So let's just go ahead and transit.
And this is we're going to the persistent session. Can we get there that way?
You'll have to no.
Or do I load the content?
You would have
and
to shut out and then come back in to do that, or file everyone through every 5 seconds through a portal.
Okay, so let me just load that content first.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
I'm learning the ropes here. Okay, so load. Here we go. Okay, we got all. Let's see Okay, I'm praying this is the right one. Okay, so here we go. Load an original location. Okay, see you
we'll
there,
find
guys.
out real soon.
Yeah, we'll find out really soon. Hold on tight, guys. See you there.
Woo!
Woo!
Probably fine. Wait, as I see the
Hey guys, how are you?
Very good, thank you.
Look at all.
FYI, everybody is on unmuted. You can unmute or mute yourselves now. I do have attenuated audio on, so to speak to somebody, you're going to have to get fairly close to them to be able to hear.
This is cool. So, I don't know if you want to walk around and kind of check things out. What's up, Mr. Madsen?
There we go. Now we got attenuated audio on. We can talk.
Hey.
What's up?
Matta, I was
Hey.
trying to. I was trying to get you to wave at me. You were sitting right next to the alien, and I was trying to take a picture of you
Oh.
with the alien underneath you. I got
I was
one.
getting what is it
I'll
for
send
me?
it to you. Yeah.
Awesome.
Right at the very end, Chris, I went up and I tickled her, so she would look at me. And she'd probably like, "What is this going on right now?" Super funny. So, absolutely. I see that the Poly Awards and Metaverse has